We have with us the goddess of big things, who wrote The God of Small Things in 1997. Arundhati, we are so happy that you are with us. Share with us something about your mother.
I don't know any, I've never met a woman like my mother, you know, because the main thing about her is that she never tried to portray herself as a good woman or a sweet woman or a obedient woman, you know. She was a woman who lived the full spectrum of herself, from brilliance to rage to militant kindness to cruelty when it was needed to fury. She lived in a very conventional society in Kottayam. I don't need to tell any of you about it, but she made space for all of herself. And this is something that I really admire, you know, and we had actually a very tough relationship. I left home when I was 17 and never went back. I really worked my way through college and everything. But when she passed away, her students in her school asked me about our relationship, and I said it was the wary and respectful relationship of two nuclear powers. We were just like, okay. But there was a great deal of love by the end of it, and respect for each other, more as women than as, you know, mother and a daughter. Like there were, I think even those things were challenged. What does it mean to be a mother? What does it mean to be a daughter? And all of that, you know. We were very different in many ways, very similar in many ways. But, you know, when the world messes with me, in my mind, I'm saying, hey, but do you know whose daughter I am? Like, do you really think I'm going to step back? No, you know.
You're in Trivandrum. What's your take on two things? On the life and livelihood of those who live in the coastal regions, the indigenous people of the coastal regions, in, you know, the smaller community there are those who actually do fishing. And secondly, also of the role of the corporate sector.
There is a macro level at which you can talk about what is happening with the free market privatization and the privatization of the economy, of our natural resources, of our means of travel, communication, essential services, and so on. I'm not able to speak with the kind of authority that local people can speak about the Vilnius port here, because I haven't been part of the struggle and I don't know the great details, but I have been part of other similar movements, whether it was the Narmada movement in the Narmada Valley, or whether it's about the displacement and the privatization of forest land in places like Bastar. So I think what we have to understand, and perhaps, you know, it's harder to understand the connection in Kerala, because in Kerala, people have still managed to resist, also because of the particular distribution of population here. You know, when you come down here from the north, a kind of totalitarian, communal government means isn't here, because people have kept it out. But what I want to say is that if you trace how things have worked, right at the time that the lock of the Babri Masjid was opened by the Congress government, the locks of the free market, of the protected economy were also opened, and you had corporatization and communalism entering together into this place. And they have traveled together, danced together, and you can't see one apart from the other. So we have to understand that both things have led to the formation of a kind of police state, a kind of security state. But now, initially you could have thought, okay, the Congress party, when it initially started opening up, calling India free market and inviting in foreign capital, and the BJP was a more ideologically medieval, organization. But in fact, now both those things have become one thing, and both those tendencies are not just, you're not just talking about the BJP and corporatization, you're talking about almost one man who's the leader, one man who's the corporate. So during the farmer struggle in Hindi, people used to say, देश को चार लोग चलाते हैं, दो खरीदते हैं और दो बेचते हैं, you know, meaning the country is run by 4 people, 2 of them sell it and 2 of them buy it. So we are in a very precarious situation there, where you're looking at this particular corporation, the Adani Corporation, now accused of what the Hindenburg report called the greatest scam in corporate history. But we are looking at a government that will not investigate it, that will protect it. You know, when people say to Father Cedric or someone like me or many people of you who are working in the poorest areas in the country, they say you're anti-India. I want to say, but who do you mean when you say India? Because we are working with the poorest people. We are on the side of the poorest people in this country. So India does not mean the corporations, the upper caste, the government. India, you cannot define India as that. We are fighting because we love this country, because we love its landscape, we love its mountains, its rivers, its people, and we believe that you cannot ignore these struggles. You know, to us, to me, these struggles are the struggles of love. They are the struggles of people who really love this place. They are not the people who are sending their children to America and then saying, no, you must never teach English in school. You know, these are people who live here, and we are people who live here, who have joined ourselves to this land and to its people. So every part of the world, actually, not just here, but the struggle of indigenous people, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's in the Congo, whether it's in Brazil, whether it's the women fighting for to save the Amazon, all these struggles are linked, you know, and yet because of the powerlessness versus the power, they cannot be linked in the way corporate capital is linked, in the way these big heads of state are linked, you know.
The right to dissent. And we have had a lot of people under the UAP with our dear Stan Swami. This whole area has been renamed the stands for the Stan Swami Nagar. Some of them I was with. Same school we came from, Pauline Gonzalez myself, Arundhati, they are now in bail. There are some other language campaign. We had the case of City Carpin, and now we have the whole news clique. Even yesterday, the Delhi High Court refused to give the 2 of them, the editor and the HR guy, that, you know, the bail from that 7-day police custody. What is your take in a democracy and the right to dissent? Whether it's against the whatever, because we are people, we love our people, our country, we love the people of India, and we are not anti-national.
No, obviously it doesn't, you know, that must go without saying. Even if somebody, it's not a question of whether you're right or wrong, it's a question of having that space. And if you don't have that space, then you cannot call this a democracy. But beyond that, what I want to say is, you know, if we are looking at becoming a people, a country, a society that wants to take its place in the world, the minute you shut down free speech, the minute you start, you know, making university spaces where students cannot ask questions, the minute you turn people into obedient minions, your collective intellectual capacity becomes very diminished. We are people who have lived in a free environment. But imagine the generations to come, if they are not allowed to question, if they are not allowed to be wrong, if they are not allowed to question the very, very basic things, from is there a God, to what is the meaning of a country, to what is the meaning of a river. We have to encourage people to be able to, young people to be able to question everything and then arrive at what they believe in. But if you are going to create these frightened little robots, ultimately that is anti-national activity, that is destroying a whole society. And I think even the people who think that they are getting ahead by supporting this kind of thing are actually diminishing the generations to come.
What's your take on caste and the way it has permeated every level of society and the church?
When I wrote The God of Small Things, The God of Small Things was obviously a book which you cannot say what a book is about. I rather arrogantly always say a novel should be about everything, but certainly there was a very strong theme in the novel which is about caste practice by the Syrian Christian community. Also about how communists all over India and also in Kerala have not been able to engage with the issue of caste, which to me is the fundamental problem and building block in this country. And recently I was speaking somewhere and I said, the left, and especially people who admire Chairman Mao, who made this famous statement that a single spark can light a prairie fire. And I said, but in India we don't have a prairie. We have a maze, and that poor little single spark is lost in the maze of caste, because caste breaks solidarity. Caste, instead of having a horizontal, lateral mind where you make solidarity and you feel brotherhood, sisterhood, equality with people, our brains are programmed to be vertical. Who are we oppressed by and who can we oppress? So caste is something that has pervaded every religion in this country. Sikhism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, of course. So until we address this question of caste and until we recognize, you see, no one caste or one community can rise up against caste. It is a way of thinking that has to be challenged. And if we do not do that, then we are always doomed to be a very small upper caste ruling elite who has found so many different ways, whether it's whether it's through feudalism or through democracy. It's the same elite that rules. So, which is why there is a great fear among certain quarters about the caste census, because that will reveal what is essentially almost a society that practices apartheid. Because if you look at who are the people in power, who are the judges, who are the editors, who are the owners of newspapers, who are the people who own these big corporations, you will find that a tiny proportion, mostly of Brahmin and Banya castes, run this country. And the vast majority are serving them in some way or the other. And anyone who asks this question has to be cut down, So everybody has erred over here in terms of, when you look at the Hindu-Muslim conflict, the truth is that the huge majority of Muslims in this country are people who converted to Islam to try and get away from the burden of caste, from the stigma of caste. And those people, poor people, are now being told, you are the sons and daughters of Mughals who have oppressed us. They actually oppressed people who were trying to escape their oppression, So, coiled inside everything is caste. in this country.
Let's visit the Gaza Strip, where hundreds and thousands are fleeing at this moment because they are opposed. The entire strip has been throttled, no light, no electricity, no water, and they're fleeing to nowhere.
Palestine has always been important for India, and now there is apparently a paradigm shift.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much more dangerous a situation we could be in, because from the news it appears that this war, the latest conflict, is about to enlarge. And you're seeing Hezbollah, you're seeing fighters from Iraq, you're seeing Lebanon, Jordan,
Syria, the airports are bombed.
And Iran now going to get in. So it's easy for us to take sides, any side, and describe terrible atrocities and get into a sort of space where it enrages us so much. Whichever side you're on, there are terrible atrocities. But the real point is, what is the origin of this conflict? The origin of this conflict is that the occupation of Palestine is a crime against humanity. You have millions of people herded in without any control over their own lives. Now that is the reason for the war, because that is hell on earth. And that hell on earth has created monstrosity on both sides. But the truth is that all the atrocities that are happening, whether they are committed by Hamas or whether they are committed by the IDF, are committed because of this situation. And the only way that this can be resolved, if the world pays attention, if international law is invoked, if the occupation ends, because no amount of commentary about the war is going to solve the problem. It's only going to expand it, deepen it, make it worse. You cannot oppress people for so long and then expect nothing to happen. There can be no justification for any form of cruelty and violence of human on human, but that doesn't help. You know, the commentary doesn't help. Understanding is what helps. And the world must pay attention and stop reacting in the way it's been reacting always. These people on this side, these people on this side. That's not going to end the problem. I actually was reading today something very interesting, and I just thought I'll read it out to you, because it's written by an Israeli soldier, actually, who's going back to fight the war. And he's a writer too, and he wrote a book called Love Israel, Support Palestine. And his name is Nir Avishai Cohen. And he says, for 56 years, Israel has been subjecting Palestinians to oppressive military rule. In my book, Love Israel, Support Palestine, I wrote, Israeli society has to ask itself very important questions about where and why the blood of its sons and daughters was spilled. A messianic religious minority has dragged us into a muddy swamp. So this person is going back to serve his country, but he's speaking with a conscience, you know. And what we need in this country are people with a conscience. We need conscientious objectors, because we are also being dragged into a swamp by a messianic religious minority, not because the religion is a minority, Messianism is a minority. And we will be dragged into a situation which can be completely explosive if we don't understand that you cannot oppress human beings who are not yours or you don't feel brotherhood with forever without a conflict. So there are so many Israelis who are wise, who are radical, who are speaking up, just like in our country, you know. So it's not, we cannot just divide this thing and look at it as Muslims versus Jews. We have to look at what are the people with conscience saying, and eventually you see they are saying the same thing. that the occupation must end, that there must be dignity and justice for everyone in that area. And right now, when it's so conflicted, only people on the outside, people like the US who are arming and funding and supporting this occupation, have to think of what it's doing, because this could end up in a conflagration that consumes the whole world.